Hello, everybody. We are live. Welcome to my weekly live Q&A. My name is Danny Segura. I am the host of this live Q&A. Obviously, as you can see, I am a reporter for MMAJunkie.com, formerly MMAfighting.com. So, how this works: you send questions, I answer them. Pretty simple. First, I answer the questions that are sent via Twitter, and then I go over to the live chat for the remaining part of this video, and I answer the questions there. So if you didn't get to ask questions on Twitter, no worries. There will be an opportunity to submit questions on the live chat that I will get to in the later part of this video. By the way, I usually go about an hour of length. So about 8 p.m. I should be done. Although I did start a little later, there was a slight delay. I had to prepare this cocktail, and also I kind of just got some bad news like a little bit like 10 minutes ago, which I kind of threw me off of the time, and I wasn't really paying attention to the clock. But what matters is that I'm here. You're here. So yeah. Before we get started, a couple of updates, and I'm gonna start doing this a little bit more often because I usually leave it to the end, but I feel like it's better to get those things right off the way. The reason why I was a little late, I kind of just got bad news. I just found out my neighbor from downstairs died because of corona. Downstairs is an apartment and also a Mexican restaurant which he owned. And I would see him every day, and I was always like, hey, ¿qué más vecino? Like, what's up, neighbor? To be honest, I didn't even know his name. I would always just call him. We'd always call each other vecinos. And yeah, because I, realized the restaurant had been closed already for a couple of days, which is weird because they were doing deliveries. And my roommate just came upstairs and yeah, and told me he spoke to someone down there and asked why it was closed, and it turns out the guy died. The guy passed away from corona. So rest in peace, vecino. I will miss you. You were a good man from the little bit that I knew you. And yeah, this shit is very real. So please wash your hands, stay safe, social distance. If you have relatives or people that you love, or just people in general that you interact with that are fairly older, keep that in mind and keep a distance. One of the reasons why I didn't go back to Florida and be with my parents and kind of be with in a better climate and more space rather than New York City, because my parents are kind of old. They're in their 60s, so I didn't want to expose them to anything. There was other reasons as well. I have my streaming set up here and other things as well, but definitely, and you guys heard me talk about how this thing doesn't really affect all that much the younger people, so I'm not really all that worried about our health, but I was always worried about others about spreading it. So make sure you keep that in mind, and as a citizen of the U.S. And just citizen of the world, make sure you do your part to try to keep others safe. That's the least that we could do. So yeah, rest in peace, man. Bad news. Oh well. Yeah, it's been getting weird here in New York. Like at first, like you just hear all these crazy numbers in the news, but we're averaging out like 700 deaths a day, and that was much lower than before. Before, there was one day we lost 1,000 people here in New York. So you always heard of the numbers, but the more you spent time here in the city, and the more friends you have here, the more your network is out here, like the closer it gets. So yeah, my neighbor passed away downstairs. I also knew like last week my landlord had caught it because his wife is a nurse, but they had gotten through it. They're fine. I had another friend, she caught it. I have a friend, or more an acquaintance, but somebody I know. He's a manager of a supermarket, and he caught it, and he got rocked pretty bad, but he didn't need to go to the hospital. So it gets weird, man, when like it just starts getting closer and closer, and like the stories are either someone or someone that lives close to you or something. It's just so sad. It's so sad. Yeah, it's rough times. That's why I mean, I know I'm going a bit of a rant here, and I haven't answered a single question like 5 minutes in, but I don't know. I just felt like saying that because it does kind of hit hard. Like it's close to home, obviously, literally within my building. So, uh, fuck, man, it's just rough. Stay safe, everybody. All right. Another update, just as far as work is related, I have actually three interviews. I interviewed Yanni and Jacek last week, Vitor Belfort, and Ricardo Lamas. All very great interviews. I really enjoyed talking to Lamas. I actually, have a cool relationship with the guy. Very nice guy. He pretty much explained to me why he decided to take on the Ryan Hall fight. Also looked back at his infamous brawl with Max Holloway, those last 10 seconds. It was kind of cool him recounting that moment that's now embedded in MMA Twitter. You know, you always see those clips circling around. So yeah, it was a cool conversation. Talked to Vitor about an update of his career. You know, he's been out. He signed with one championship a year ago. Hasn't done anything since. So spoke to him about that. So make sure you check that out. Also, extensively about the Brazil's MMA scene. How him, Lyoto Machida, Anderson Silva, the Nogueira brothers, Shogun. Like there was all this huge generation, and all of a sudden, although you got your Paulo Costas and there's a few other guys here and there, it's still not the same. And why that kind of not that it fell apart, but why we've not seen as many Brazilian stars, and we haven't seen the growth of Brazil kind of keep going after that. It kind of just staled. So he had a pretty intricate response about that, and we talked extensively about that. So that was interesting. And then Joanna, also a good interview. We spoke about what's next for her. She's pretty interested in that rematch, and kind of listening to her kind of convinced me that's kind of the move. But she wants to get paid for it. She said it was a money fight. So yeah, as far as work, I did that. So make sure you check that out over at MMA old habits, MMAjunkie.com. Yeah, you can check that out. And yeah, I felt like good content. Obviously, I'm a little biased, but yeah. All right, so enough of the chatter. Let's get this thing rocking. All right, well, let me get out of the way a little bit. There we go. First question by Michael Terrell on Twitter. Does Tony cutting weight 3 weeks before potentially cutting weight again benefit Gagey? Maybe Tony doesn't have the faith in the new date. Michael Terrell asks. So yes, for those that don't know, this is actually kind of interesting, kind of very on brand, and not surprising, very on brand on Tony Ferguson. So the guy was scheduled to fight Justin Gaethje at UFC 249. He still is. I mean, there's a debate to have about that, but at least on paper, that was on April 18th, just this weekend, and the dude still decided to cut weight for a fight that wasn't existent. Obviously, that got canceled. We know the story. The Disney executives called Dana White and basically told him not to have the event. And yeah, so that got canceled. And the dude still made weight. And I saw a video by David Goggins, which I will get into that later. This is pretty interesting. So ideally, from a practical standpoint, I would say, Michael Terrell, this does affect him. I mean, he's a little bit older now. He's obviously in his 30s. I always miss his age. He's 37, if I'm not mistaken, Tony Ferguson. So he is no young gun. I'm pulling him up here, his record, just to make sure. So, he's a little older, and we know that usually weight cuts tend to have a little bit of a harsher effect. He's 36. The older fighters get. We often see it all the time in combat sports where, a fighter starts at a very early age fighting at a weight class, and then over time is forced to move up. Darren Till is a good example of it. As you get older, your body just retains to, I don't know if your bones get denser or what it holds on to, but it's just harder to lose the weight. So yes, from a practical standpoint, dude, you're getting down to 155. We know that you're a fairly big dude for the weight class, and you're going to have to potentially do this again if the new UFC 249 date, which is May 9th, actually goes down. You're going to have another weight cut, which, it's rough. It's rough on your body. So on all those points, on a practical standpoint and a biological standpoint, it somewhat doesn't make any sense. The weight cuts are only done once, and you only deplete yourself, because that's what you are doing. You're depleting yourself only once. And yeah, so that doesn't make sense. But David Goggins, who's someone that's I don't really know exactly what he does, but he's like a personal trainer, motivational guy, very famous dude, just known for his bizarre methods and kind of just being a madman a little bit. Joe Rogan talks a lot about him. The guy actually was running, and he was making a video, and he's like, yo, that's the most savage shit I've ever seen. Stay hard, like all this other stuff, and was praising Tony Ferguson for this. And he said something very interesting. He said, look, when I was running, I'm not the best runner, but I made sure that every time I ran, I was posting about it. I was posting videos about it, and running in these hard conditions and etc. Just to let my competition know what's up, just to let them know and send them a message. And I feel like that's very much what Tony Ferguson tried to do and what he achieved. I mean, we're talking about it right now. That is straight up some savagey shit. Like, you don't got to fight booked and you still make the weight. Championship weight, 155, because he could have made 156. But um, yeah, that definitely sends a message to the division. Look, if I'm fighting in that weight class, if I'm the champion, I go, dude, this guy's nuts. Like, that definitely does send a message, and it's all about staying hard. And in these times, it's difficult. The training is difficult. Being with coaches is difficult. Just this whole virus has interrupted training camps, so I do feel like it does send an important message. Like, look, I'm still out here. I can still make weight. What's up? Like it's definitely a very strong message. And we know that Tony Ferguson thrives on mental fortitude. Obviously, he's a very good athlete, and technique wise, he's got skills. But what has gotten the man through so much, recovering from injury, fighting against, and not the promotion per se, but I guess the situations, because, he hasn't been able to fight for the belt and still staying positive, still staying on top of it, still winning fights. You gotta have a hard head for that. You got to have a fortress up there. So the man is definitely bulletproof, and I think that's just part of it. So, shouts out to Tony Ferguson. That dude is real. That dude is as real as it gets. And you know, from a practical standpoint, cutting weight 3 weeks before the fight doesn't make any sense. But a lot of things about Tony Ferguson don't make sense, and that's why we love him. So, to answer your question, Michael Terrell, it makes no sense. But if there's a guy that it won't affect, it'd be someone like Tony Ferguson. If anything, it could probably like help him. So I don't know. That guy defies all rules. To be quite frank with you. All right. Question número dos by Jose Navarrete. Hey Danny, hope all is well. Hope all is well with you, sir. With UFC's insistence to continue during this pandemic, what do you think of eliminating or adjusting weight cuts? Weight cutting is a great risk factor for lowering an athlete's immune system, even if just for non-title fights. So great question, Jose. Fantastic question. And I've actually discussed this a little bit in other videos that I've done, kind of just bringing it up as when people have asked me, like, oh, what are some precautions the UFC could take within this climate to be as safe as possible, right? And that was actually one of the suggestions that I threw out. I never went too much in detail, but I did discuss about it. So I'm glad that you kind of brought it up, because I think it's something that people should consider, promoters should consider, Dana White should consider. And actually, we know that he's not considering it, because recently my colleague Nolan King, shouts out to Nolan, he did a video, I'm sorry, no, an article basically stating and showing UFC president Dana White's kind of all staff meeting with the fighters, and him discussing, how the promotion is going to move forward under this climate. And he touched on a bunch of different topics. I encourage you to check that out. It kind of gives you a look into what they're thinking and their outlook towards the pandemic, and also how they're going to deal with it, and kind of where they're at. And yeah, one of the things was, he was asked about weight cutting and about catch weights, and basically Dana White said he was not interested. He didn't dig it. He said, I believe something like catch weights can get messy or something like that, which it can. But look, I think, and it could also, anything that any new rule or any new change that you implement, you also got to think about the future, what it could mean for other, for the organization, for other potential suggestions of rules and laws, right? And you don't want to set up a certain precedent, right? And I believe catchweights could set that up, but at the same time, is like we're in an unprecedented time. The odds of another pandemic. Pandemics can happen at any times, but it seems that like the major ones happen like every 100 years or something like that, like globally. So and even if it happens again, like the odds of that happening, first of all, I would say they're not all that high, right? That we're hit with something again soon. And if they are, at least you have some rules to know how to deal with it. And I think one of them should be a 1 or 2 pound allowance. I've mentioned how this is actually done in high school wrestling. When I was wrestling in high school, after the winter break, which is basically Thanksgiving, Christmas, or whatever holidays you celebrate. There's usually most cultures usually celebrate a couple. There's a lot of eating, so kids would get heavier, and in order to avoid unhealthy ways of cutting weight, because there was already guys already cutting to their limit, they would allow you to come in a pound or two heavy depending on the tournament. I've been to tournaments that sometimes even three. um, so I think that should be the case, kind of like a coronavirus thing. Again, it could get messy in the sense of maybe there's a fighter that never was able to make 155 like a welterweight, right? But maybe if they do a 2 pound allowance, they can make 158, because technically the weight cut would be to 156, or let's say they just do the borderline at 157. Um, Maybe they can make 157 and they start fighting there to get an advantage. Like, there's definitely that case, and I get it, and it could get messy. But at this point, I don't think fighters in this climate would take advantage of that. I just feel like the guys that are already in that division will just benefit from getting dehydrated, because they still have to make a weight that is not their walking weight, but maybe a little less. Have an extra pound of water and bodily fluids inside of you, which we know is good for your body. Obviously, your body's made out of mostly water, so right, it's like 70% water, 80% water. So yeah, that's what I would suggest, and I would like promotions that are hosting fights within this climate to do that, because Ray Longo said this, and he's a world-class coach, and other fighters have expressed the same thing. Fighters are not getting nearly the same training camp. It's just a lot harder to put in the road work. It's just a lot harder to put in the work without all these training partners being at the gym, etc. So certainly I would like, I think that would be a good measure just for this situation. It won't set an ugly precedent. It's just literally just COVID-19 preventive. Um, because these fighters often get sick after weight cuts, because your immune system is quite low, and catching COVID-19, we know that for the young and healthy, maybe it won't put you in a hospital, but it'll definitely put you to bed and make you feel quite bad. So it could cancel your fight, or it could get into worse complications if you're that dehydrated. So again, I'm no doctor, but I'm just talking from what I've heard from the experts. So that's what I would like to see. So great question. Yes, I think that's something promoters should consider. Survey the fighters, see what, give the fighters options. See what they think about this. But I think a lot of fighters would agree. All right, question number 3 by Blake. Shouts out to Blake. Have you seen the first 2 installments of The Last Dance? Any thoughts? Yes. So I actually checked them out this morning. Great stuff. Obviously, I know who Michael Jordan is, but you guys know I'm not a huge basketball guy. I was a little bit when the Heat were popping, and I was living in South Florida. I was towards the end of my high school days and early college days. So I think that was like around like 2010, 2011, something like that. That they were killing it with Bosh, LeBron, and D Wade. And yeah, so I got into it a little bit, and I'll watch the big games, and I do think it's exciting. I like it. I like consuming the actual product, but I'm not as into it as I am MMA or soccer. So, and also I didn't live in this country when Michael Jordan was popping, and I was very young as well. So I've obviously known he's like a very big deal, but this is helping kind of put it into perspective for me. A good way that I can describe it, or another documentary that I can compare it to, would be Maradona on HBO, which is actually fantastic. I recommend it to anybody. Chuck Mindenhall actually saw that. Like that was when I was still over at MMA Fighting, and it was one day that, like, I forgot why we were hanging out. I don't know if it was after the beat, um or we might have shot like a preview show for something. I don't remember. Oh, I gotta get out of the way. Um, I don't remember exactly what the circumstance was, but anyways, he saw it, and he was just basically talking about how awesome it was, and he wasn't a soccer fan. So I think this is very much kind of like the same situation. Like, I'm appreciating it. I think it's great, and I'm not really a basketball fan, but it's definitely putting things into perspective about how big of a deal that guy was. Watching the footage of him walking around and people going crazy and all that. Like, he truly was a superstar. And I do have a slight fascination about, like, people who achieve that kind of greatness. if you notice, they all have something in common. And to quote Kanye West from a song that he did, I believe, what was part of Life of Pablo, the album. He said, "Name a genius that ain't crazy," and that's 100% true. I mean, to be the best among the best, to be world class, to be that guy, very much like an Anderson Silva in his time or a John Jones to compare it to MMA. To be that person, you gotta be one a genius within your area of expertise, right? And two, um, like yeah, in a way you kind of got to be a little bit crazy. You just do, because you have to push yourself to corners of that you've never been to, and not only that many other athletes haven't been to. And we're talking about people that make that are so good that make it a living and make a lot of money out of it, and yet you're able to put yourself apart from that pack, and really distance yourself as so much better from them. Just from those two episodes, so many people talked about how great Michael Jordan was, and how easy it was to notice him. Like, I forgot what coach they interviewed, but he was like, yeah, within the one training session, I was like, the first training session, I was like, yep, this guy's better than everybody else here. Another guy at his university, which was NC State, right? He was saying like, yeah, I was better than him when we played, and that lasted about 2 weeks. Like, there's just certain people that are just, yeah, they're just meant for greatness, and they go to crazy lengths to achieve it. They're hard workers, but they also have that raw talent, and those people that have that it factor, man, that are able to cross those boundaries. I'm very intrigued into what they do and their lifestyles, because usually they're very interesting people. So and you can learn a lot from them. So a lot from their mistakes as well, not only their virtues and the things they're good at. So yeah, I've been enjoying it, man. I'm a sucker for documentaries. That's how I get into media. Really, like how I got into MMA. Like, yeah, I like interviewing, I like writing and all that, and like don't get me wrong, I enjoy it. But I was hoping, and I still hope, that I could do more documentary work. I've done two short documentaries. One on Mike Rio. He's a former UFC fighter. He fought in the Ultimate Fighter live season, which was with Ale Quinta and Michael Chiesa. And it was obviously post that. I did a little documentary about that. Looking back at it, I don't think it's that good, but as a college project, I thought it was pretty good. Um, and yeah, I did another one in Spanish for MMAfighting.com when I was very new in one of my Colombia trips visiting my family with Frei Serrano. He's a former UFC fighter, former tough Latin America contestant. And yeah, I've just been into documentaries, and I hope I can shoot one in the future. Just little features, video features. I'm handy with the camera. I love editing, so that's like a little passion of mine that I don't exercise as often, but hopefully in the future I can. But yeah, just to answer your question, The Last Dance, fantastic so far. I love it. I love everything that's it about. What's it about? The storyline itself is already pretty interesting. I didn't know all that friction between management and the players and the coach. I was not aware of that. So yeah, it's good, and I recommend everybody to watch it. It's awesome. It's great. All right, number 4 by Nick Hill on Twitter. John hasn't been pulling any punches with the Twitter shots. He's taken on Reyes, Israel, Smith. Do you think this heel version of John Jones is better or worse for him from a popularity standpoint? I'm liking this bad guy version of Jones. It's reminding me a bit of Mayweather. Yeah, I think popularity wise, I mean, we're talking about it right now. You're asking about it. It's getting retweeted, it's getting liked. People are replying to it. So there's a famous saying in PR, and you guys have heard of it. Yeah, there's no such thing as bad PR. I feel like, which there actually is, obviously. But to a certain extent, even some bad PR can just make you far more visible, which ultimately could bring a lot to you, right? Visibility, being famous, etc. Especially if you're in prize fighting. So Mayweather made a career, or that you basically said it, how it reminds you of Mayweather, and a lot of people didn't like Mayweather. They still don't. But one of the reasons why he was a superstar is because either way, you felt something about him. You were passionate towards him, whether it was like or hate. You knew who he was, and yeah, and you were invested into whatever he was doing. whether it was to see him lose. Interestingly enough, so from that standpoint, like I don't think he's crossed. I mean, things have gotten a little weird. Some of the things he said, but I don't think he's done anything we haven't seen in the fight game, honestly. And I feel like a lot of the issues that fighters have had with him in the past and fans was that he was maybe a little bit of two faced, and I don't mean in a bad way, like in a way that he was being backstabbing someone or anything like that. More in the sense of like he kind of had this like dual life, dual public personality, in the sense of he would sometimes be very gracious and be very humble and say all these things, how he's like learned from his lessons, and he's a man of God, this and that. But then again, he's always attached to his headlines and getting into trouble. So if he's kind of just embracing the bad guy, I feel like there's a population out there in MMA that would kind of appreciate it, that because they didn't like to be kind of having him on the fence a little bit. And yeah, I mean, we're talking about it right now, so it's definitely just building rivalries and heat for future stuff. So, what do I make of it? I do think it's a little bit strange that it's coming off him getting arrested for driving under the influence, and well, that's really the only thing he got charged with, right? The gun charge dropped, the misuse of a firearm, from what I remember. But yeah, I mean, he got basically a slap on the wrist because of that, because we know that the jails are not a good environment for COVID-19, in the sense of that it can spread and it can get a lot of people sick very fast. So they're avoiding people that do fairly minor things, right? That they might not consider a huge threat to society. They might just let them out, or etc. So anyway, so you would think that like he would have a moment at least of kind of laying low a little bit, and he's certainly not doing that with calling people out and saying certain things. Something interesting about Conor McGregor, if you notice, the guy gets in trouble, but for every bad headline, there's usually somewhat of a good headline attached to it. Like if you look at his Twitter, he's done a great job with supporting sort of the Irish government. I believe he's donated a lot of money to help medical facilities and people that are struggling and battling COVID-19. So, and he's had other things as well, like helping other people out. So he does get into trouble, but at the same time, you kind of see him. And I'm not saying a right makes a wrong okay, but at least there's, I don't know, somewhat of a balance, right? And the guy kind of understands, like, all right, I'm in heat, I'm kind of heated right now. I'm gonna stay, lay low, and maybe the invest my time into certain things that could possibly get me good PR. I'm not saying he does those things exactly for good PR, but you get what I'm saying. With John, you kind of don't get that. So I don't know if he's going full heel here, or there's something more to it, but definitely keeping an eye on that. But as far as now, I think everything we've seen has very much been kind of within the the margins of I guess what's okay within MMA. I mean, I don't think he's said anything so controversial that people are freaking out, right? So yeah, to answer your question, Nick Hill. Oh, all right. Question numero cinco. Favorite MMA ref by the Seaside. Shouts out to the Seaside. Always showing mad love. I appreciate that. Let's see. There's a lot of good MMA refs. So my favorite one for the longest time was John McCarthy. I feel like he was like the first. I don't want to call him celebrity ref, but like certainly like well-known ref. I mean, he's just one of the very first refs, period, as far as MMA is concerned. He was there when the rules got invented and all that. I mean, he's part responsible for that. But yeah, I mean, he it was Big John, right? There was a whole brand to him, Big John, right? He had the whole "let's get it on." He had even his own saying. I remember playing like the early versions of the UFC, like the one that was on regular Xbox, not even Xbox 360, and they only had like maybe it was very much like Street Fighter. Like it was just like how to pick a fighter. It wasn't like you choose a weight class or anything. They just had a box with little boxes, and you kind of just went through them, and it was just like all weight classes mixed together, and you can have like Matt Hughes fighting Tito Ortiz, etc. So yeah, I've always been a fan of Big John, obviously, because the way I came up, and just he was a big deal when I was a fan, and I didn't even work in MMA media. Now he's now a commentator for Bellator, and kind of works the broadcast. He's no longer refing. So I guess he's out of the picture. But if it was kind of like in the history, I would say him. Herb Dean, I really liked for some time. I really respect that he's a former fighter. Believe it or not, he actually fought Joe Diesel Riggs, who was one of the best 170 pound fighters at the time. So the dude knows what's up. The dude's been in there and fought some tough dudes, and he's gotten tested. So I appreciate that. I like him. I know he's had some controversial calls, especially in recent years, but nonetheless, I still think he's a good referee. Mm, I think somebody that's underrated, I would say Mike Beltran. He's cool. He always seems in control of things, and also he's a big dude. Someone that's a small dude, small in stature, but has definitely control of the ring, and I feel like he's done a fantastic job. Has been Keith Peterson. Funny enough, a story about him. Let me put this question away. He actually refereed Joanna Jędrzejczyk versus Zhang Weili, if I'm not mistaken, at UFC 248. I was at that event, and we both had the same flight back. So what I did was, most people, or a lot of people, usually go cover the event and then go back to their hotels, work, and pass out, do their thing, and then midday next day they travel. However, I didn't want to lose that much time, so because remember, there's a 3 hour difference between New York and Vegas. And then the plane ride itself is like what, like close to 6 hours, I think, like 5 hours. So you would lose a lot of time, the 5 hours plus you'd be moving forward in time. So I'm like, F it. I'm just going to take the first flight out, which was at 6 a.m. So I literally finished working got out of the event like at 3, like rushed to my hotel, just packed, got my shit, went to the airport, and that was that. And he was in my same waiting room. I don't know if he recognized me or not. He did kind of give me like a weird look, I think, or maybe that's just me being deprived from being up like over 24 hours. Because we had a dominance media day in that morning, so I had to wake up somewhat early. But yeah, I saw him, and I kind of regret it now. But I'm like, I kind of didn't want to bother him, and I just left him alone. Like, I didn't say anything. I just kind of minded my own business. I'm also like very low key about shit, so I was just like, whatever. But then I realized, man, he refereed that fight. That fight was pretty sick, and it could have been a good interview. Kind of like, you know, the only view that the only person that witnessed that historic fight actually in the cage, other than Yanni and Jacek and Zhang Weili, was Keith Peterson. So that would have been kind of cool. But yeah, kind of missed opportunity there. But yeah, I think he also does a fantastic job. So yeah. Oh, all right, yeah. So to answer your question, I like Keith Peterson. I think a lot of the referees do a good job. Mike Beltran is good as well, and Herb Dean is always a legend in that world. So, and Big John's he's the man. All right, question by anonymous dude 123 on Twitter. He asks, Danny, I am envious of your native language. Not only do they not only do the ladies enjoy it, but it will come in handy in MMA. Forgive me for my ignorance. Have you ever written or done commentary in Espanol? Have you dreamed of traveling with your favorite Latin fighter and translating for them? So interesting question here. I appreciate the question, anonymous dude 123. First of all, it is a language. I always thought like Italian or French was like the language of love, right, or whatever. But as I got older, I started realizing that Spanish also helped around in that area as well. So it does come through. I'm not gonna lie. Um, I mean, it's a cool language. I like the way it sounds. I think I would consider it a romantic language, up there with Italian and French. Now there are a lot of versions of Spanish, right? As far as like the accents, so it can be the same language, but it can sound very different depending on what country you go to. And it's something that I feel like maybe a lot of Americans and people that are not Hispanic don't realize, because they just hear Spanish and they don't really differentiate the different types of accents. One of actually, this is a bit off topic, but to kind of give you an example, the first season of Narcos, which was in Colombia, they used a bunch of Hispanic fighters. I mean, fighters, actors that that weren't Colombian and like Puerto Rican, and like for people that know Spanish, like it was so clear and so obvious. Like a lot of people bailed on Narcos because it was just like literally this guy's Colombian. You couldn't get a Colombian actor, and meanwhile he's got like a thick Cuban accent. Like it's ridiculous, and it kind of pissed me off. Not gonna lie, like even Pablo Escobar wasn't Colombian. He was Brazilian and had like a weird accent. Like it was hard for me to watch the show, but I gave it a couple of tries, and then over time you kind of forget about it. But yeah, just as a side note, so I like Colombian Spanish. I think it sounds nice, and I've done Spanish work before. If you actually go on my channel, I interviewed Chito Vera, Marlon Vera from Ecuador, like like a week ago, 2 weeks ago. That was in Spanish. I also have an interview up there with Juan Espino in Spanish, with Joel Romero, with Santiago Poncinibio, so all UFC fighters. And I started working in MMA media doing Spanish work. It wasn't in English. I used to be an intern for like a year plus, I think maybe even more, for this Hispanic media outlet at the time called El Octagono. It no longer exists. Rest in peace. It was gave me a lot of good experience and met a lot of great people through there. Actually, my first very big interview was with them, and it was Cain Velasquez, and I interviewed him in Spanish when I was like 20 years old. I might have been 19 actually. So yeah, actually, in one of my Vegas trips that they paid for, I covered UFC 156. I couldn't even drink. Like it was the most boring thing ever. I was 19 in Vegas, so that sucked. But yeah, man, like I've done a lot of Spanish work, and I still do it kind of like a little bit behind the scenes in the sense of you'll see an article on MMAJunkie.com that's in English, but it's translated from Spanish. And I usually, if I do that, I include it in the story for full transparency, like he said in Spanish or she, whoever I'm talking to. But yeah, it's a cool language. You can learn. Actually, take this time that we're all in lockdown, buy Rosetta Stone or YouTube or something, and you can learn Spanish. It's fairly easy, I think, at least to speak it. And yeah, I mean, if you want to look at stuff, my work in Spanish, you can go on my channel and find examples there. But yeah, it's something I enjoy doing, and I hope I can do more of. It's definitely cool. Lowering this down to give me some headroom. There we go. So yeah. So, anyways, I appreciate the questions very much. That was it for all the Twitter questions. Very good questions. The last like 3 weeks, they've been all on point. So, shouts out to everybody that submitted questions and participated, because you guys are the people that provide content for this live Q&A. So it's up to you whether we talk about something interesting or not. And you guys have done a fantastic job. So thank you for the good questions. Appreciate it. By the way, I'll use this pause real quickly. Shouts out to VHTS. They've been sending me free gear. And I was a fan of their brand before they sent me free gear. Like I've bought things from them. They're actually one of the very few brands in combat sports that I feel like uses um, like fashion in like, I don't want to say the hype world, but like just today's fashion stuff that's relevant, and they actually and very good quality stuff too, and they actually put it to combat sports apparel, which is sick. Because like for the longest time, one of the reasons why, well, not one of the reasons, but one of the things I've never liked about combat sports is that like often it's a little tacky, like in the sense of like I was never a huge fan of Affliction and like all those brands, and they always painted MMA with like in combat sports it's like yeah, like the Just Bleed guy, and like I don't know, like I just figured like the chain, the fence, and like a skull on fire or something like that. That's kind of like the aesthetics that I always got from it. But VHTS actually produces like a lot of like minimalist, like cool, comfortable shit. Like this is a Champion hoodie, so like this is like quality stuff. It's like nice, like you feel it. It's nice, thick, and they do a lot of cool concepts. So I've been rocking a lot of their gear that they've been sending me. And like people on the streets are like, I've had people like be like, oh man, that's like a cool piece or whatever. Um, and yeah, so like I was a big fan of them, and they've been sending me some stuff. So shouts out to them. Again, this is no paid advertisement or anything. I'm literally just free publicity because I believe in the brand, and I like it very much. They're out of here, out of New York, so they got a cool style. All right, so with that out of the way, it is time to answer questions on the live chat. So if you have a question in mind, if something came up, even if you submitted questions via Twitter and just want to follow up on something or whatever, um, make sure to throw that on the live chat and I can get to it in a little bit. All right. So let's go down the list here. Thoughts on Amanda Nunes pulling out of UFC 249? Yeah, I've been a little bit distracted, not gonna lie. Again, some personal news. I'm actually getting a dog this week. I'm gonna adopt him. So by next broadcast or next stream, I will introduce him to you guys. So yeah, I've been busy with that. There's a lot of paperwork that goes with it, and I've been focused on other stuff. So like, I've obviously kept a close eye on the news cycle, but yeah, I saw that Nunes basically said something that she was likely out of her Felicia Spencer bout. I gotta check up what's the latest on that. Let me just double check, but it looks like she's out, and yeah, that's a huge blow. But let me double check on that. It looks like she's out, but there are, yeah. So basically, Amanda Nunes said, this is her quote from CBS Sports. Actually, I'm not fighting May 9th. I'm going to fight, but I don't know. I don't know yet. I don't think this is the right time for me right now to fight. Let this coronavirus pass a little so I can at least have a full camp. We can maybe see around June, but let me see what's going to happen. But I'm not fighting May 9th. So that's her quote. So it's definitely it was a nice title fight that I was looking forward to. We can all agree maybe it wasn't the biggest fight. It's not Khabib Ferguson, right? Which is not happening. We got Ferguson Gaethje, but it was still a big fight. She's the goat, the women's goat. She's fighting at 145, which we know usually her best weight class is 135. So always whenever she goes up to 145, there's a little bit of more mystique around her fights because there's a little bit more doubt. She's fighting bigger ladies. And so yeah, definitely a blow. But look, I'm not surprised about her comments. I spoke to Ricardo Lamas. The dude's like around like cut from the same cloth of like Jeremy Stevens. Like he's an old school guy still fighting in the modern era. I believe he's 37, although he looks in great shape. But he's like, yeah, like I was down to fight because I signed a contract, and when I tell people I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna do it. And like the way he says it with like such a conviction, like that guy's. If you've never met Ricardo Lamas, if you've never seen him at an event or whatever, the nicest guy ever. But he's definitely there's like an intensity about like he definitely has like a presence, and like yeah, the way he said it was like, yep, I signed, so I said I was gonna be there, so no matter what, I'm gonna show up. And the dude didn't have a great training camp for the Ryan Hall fight. He was telling me how he usually goes to Miami to MMA Masters to train, and he couldn't travel. One, he's not gonna. Things are sketchy in Florida, so he's not gonna go there. Two, they closed non-essential businesses, so that would have been tough. And three, he's like, I'm not gonna force my family to travel under these circumstances, and also I'm not gonna leave them. So again, a lot of fighters are not getting in normal training camps, so this is not the ideal time to fight. Now, if you need to make money, you usually take that fight. But for the people that have a lot to lose, and they are fairly comfortable, they don't risk it. Look at Khabib. Khabib's like, yo, I got money. I don't need this. This he even said it. This is not professional. Like I'm not gonna fight in a location that I don't know where without a proper training camp. Like I'm out. I'm bailing. When things go back to normal, I'll return like a professional athlete. But at this point in time, I'm not doing that. And Nunes, we know she's got double gold. Um, I don't think she's probably paid the same amount as Habib, but being a dual champion, I would assume that for some time now, I would assume she's got a good amount of money saved up, and she's fine financially. So, she's not in the right circumstances, so she has the sort of the power and the financial means to be like, yeah, I'm not fighting. I'm gonna chill out for a little bit. So so yeah, I'm not surprised. And the more we're gonna see this more often, where fighters are gonna be like, especially fighters that don't need the money, they're gonna be like, I'm good. I'll just wait till this thing gets a little better and I can get a little bit of a better training camp in. So yeah, not surprised. Bro, you need to move out. Nah, I'm staying in New York for now. This is my home. I consider myself kind of like a New Yorker at this point. But I mean, if things get terribly worse here, which they're not, they're actually getting better. As I mentioned earlier on the stream, we were having like 1,000 deaths a day. Now it's like 700. So things seem a little bit more stable. So it looks promising. But yeah, I'm gonna stay here unless things get terribly worse. Then I'll consider leaving. But for now, I'm gonna stay here in New York. And yeah, rest in peace, my neighbor. Good man. Always very nice to me. Very helpful. Christopher Christopher Graham. Pick one fighter from the following promotions that you would like to see in the UFC, who have never fought for them before. Yeah, have never fought for them before. Bellator, One Championship, Ryzen, Cage Warriors, Aries, etc. So Aries is a new promotion. Fairly, I don't know much about them. But if I had to pick a fighter that a few fighters that have never fought in the UFC, and I would love for them to be in the UFC. Mm, Douglas Lima has to be, I think, my number one. Douglas Lima, I think he's prime. He's in his prime right now. He's as experienced as he can get. You know, at this point, like, yeah, you can always get more experience, but at this point, the guy knows what he needs to know. He's still in physically in amazing shape. He's not that old. So he's at that sweet spot where you got the experience, but you're not that old where you still have a lot of physical ability. So that's a man that I'd like to see tested against other 170 pound fighters who we think are the best in the world, such as the Kamaru Usmans, obviously, the Tyron Woodleys, the Colby Covingtons. Um, I would be very curious to see how he would fare. I think he could surprise a lot of people, so that's one of the reasons why I'd like to see him. Another fighter, Patricky Pitbull. Sorry, no, Patricio. Patricky's the older one. Patricio, double champ, very, very skilled guy. I'd like to see him against other 45ers, see how he would fare as well. Um, PFL, Kayla Harrison, if she could somehow make 145. I would have loved to have seen her fought Cyborg when she was in the UFC, or now Amanda Nunes. Like, obviously, I think it's still a little bit early, but maybe develop her a little more, give her some fights, and then throw her in the deep end a few fights from now. But Kayla Harrison is one. Trying to think of others. Viviano Fernandez over at one. I mean, I think he's a bit old now, but when he first signed with one and he refused to go to the UFC, he's one of the guys that I always want, especially at 125 and 135. You wonder how he would do because he was regarded to be the best guy for a while by a lot of pundits and people that know about the sport. So sadly, we never found out, but he's a guy. I would say Kid Yamamoto, although he went to the UFC, I would say Kid Yamamoto when he was much younger because he was so great and he went into the UFC once he was already in his later stages. And we saw some glimpses of his brilliance, but it was never in full display, and thought that was kind of unfortunate. But I mean, if we're going to play that, I can say Fedor and go down the line. So let's just stay current. Who others? Trying to think. Shinya Aoki. He's a bit older now, but maybe a few years ago. Who else? I mean, there's several guys, obviously. Usually they're the best from other organizations. Those are the guys that you would have liked to see in the UFC. But yeah, but they also, do great. They have great fights and put on a great product wherever they're at. So, you don't have to be in the UFC. Like that doesn't keep me up. That like I don't think about that. Like, oh man, I wish this fighter were here. I don't really think about that. But I understand as a fan, yeah. But yeah, that's not something I think about. Spot on picks. Do you get paid for each interview? No, I don't. I am an employee. I'm part of the staff over at MMA Junkie, so I just get a salary. If you were freelance, if you were a freelance guy or a contractor, then maybe you would get paid per interview, or you would have to do like a certain amount of interviews. Usually that's how freelance works. A certain amount of interviews a week or a month, etc., for you to get certain amount. So, but yeah, no, I am a staffed employee. So we're getting close to 8 p.m. I know I logged in. I went live a few minutes later, so I'll go till about I'll just read this questions. I'll go latest like 8:10 or something like that, just to give you guys a heads up. Christopher Graham, again, give us your top prospects or dark horses in each of the UFC divisions. So that would have been a better question for Twitter because I would have read it maybe a few hours ago and I would have had some time to kind of process that. So right on the fly, I'll do my best to remember all prospects, but just as a disclaimer, there could be a chance that that I may be leaving somebody out. So let's see. Flyweight 125. I mean, there's not many fighters, so I don't really have anyone in mind. I would say, Brandon Moreno is already a contender. He's not really a prospect, but he's still young. I think that's someone that could do something for sure. Could definitely find himself in a title fight. I think he's very good. 135. I know it sounds like I'm kind of like giving a shout out to all the Hispanic fighters, but I'm really not trying to do that here. But Chito Era, Marlon Vera, dude's on a 5-fight win streak, 5 finishes in a row. And, one of the issues that he had, and I would ask him a lot about it during interviews, I would always ask him, is like, you're kind of like the Cowboy Cerrone of 135. Like, you're always taking these short notice fights, like fighting Brad Pickett in London, fighting, what was the other British guy he fought in London? Like, always fighting people in their backyards, taking the fights short notice. Like, I always ask him, do you find this like to be an ideal situation for you to succeed? And he was always like, I don't care. Like, I'll fight anybody, anywhere. I'm always ready. And I get that. And I can certainly appreciate that. And you can gain a lot of fans doing that. But I feel like, for some time now, he's kind of, he was doing that and he just managed to kind of put some wins together. And at some point he realized, okay, if maybe I'm a little bit more calculated and I'm a little bit more careful, I can build on this and actually make a run for the title, and that's what he's doing. He just needs a ranked opponent, which was going to be Jimmy Rivera, but that fight fell through. But that's a guy that just needs a big name, and I think he could very well get a win over a big name, and he'd be right up there, man. We'd be talking about him among other title challengers. Who else at 135? So I give shout outs to not only the Hispanic fighters. I'm trying to think right now. Throw some stuff in on the chat to refresh my memory. 135. Okay, I'll get back to it if someone comes up. 145. Dark horse. There's several. I think Shane Burgos, who recently signed a contract with the UFC, I think he's looking good, and that's someone that's still developing, young, and I feel like he's a dark horse. He could definitely do something. Trying to think of others. Kadar, I know he like recently coming off a loss against Zabit Magomed Sharipov, but I feel like that's someone that is still very much in development and could do big things in the future. 145. I mean, there's so many. I mean, 155. Obviously Islam Makhachev, Charles Oliveira, Alex Hernandez. You still got to give him some credit. I know he's had some that Cerrone lost, but I think he can still do something. Yeah, 170. Geoff Neal. I feel like Nico Price could do something. 185. Edmund Shabazian, obviously. Who else at 185? That's all I can think of at the moment. 205. I don't know if 205 has any prospects right now. People that are looking good. Heavyweight, dude. Heavyweight, man. Heavyweight is where it gets interesting, bro. Heavyweight, you got Cyril Gane. The dude's like 3-0 or 4-0. Like, he literally just started MMA and he already has a decision win, a KO win, and a win by heel hook. The guy can do it all. Very much evolving, and he's huge physical specimen. That guy can do something. Who else? I feel like there's a few of them. I feel like heavyweight's a good weight class, but none of them are coming to mind right now. Yeah, good. Milton Martinez, good suggestion. Sugar Sean O'Malley at 135, 100%. I mean, that guy put away Teco Quiñones, and I think Teco Quiñones is very, very good, and he put him away quite quite with ease. So I was very impressed by that, and he's still very young. So Sean O'Malley for sure, and he's also got that swag and a little bit of the it factor. He could definitely be a future star. So yeah, and Ryan Hall, yeah, Ryan Hall at 145 as well, 100%. Yeah, but I feel like heavyweight has like some good names coming up, but none of them come to mind. Let me pull up the heavyweight division right now, at least the heavyweight rankings. Let's see, UFC heavyweights. Let's put UFC rankings. Yeah, as far as females, Macy Barber, I think she's so young. She's like 21 or something like that. She could definitely still do stuff. Although she lost to Modafferi, I think she can turn things around. She's still very young. Let's see who else. Heavyweight. Rosenstruck, Jairzinho Rosenstruck. I mean, that guy's 10-0. He's not even a prospect. He's a contender right now. But guys that are coming up that I feel like could become champions, those are guys that I'm mentioning. Yeah. And as far as the female fighters, yeah, there's a few. I mean, Mackenzie Dern, I feel like she still can do something. She's still very young, very good jiu-jitsu. She just has to tighten some things up, and she could very well pose a lot more problems to a lot more people. Because she's already a problem to many fighters. Amanda Rivas, the girl um, Mackenzie Dern. She's very good. I feel like she could actually do some interesting stuff. She's got very good striking, good jujitsu, good athlete as well. She's got like a bit of young Jacek in her, like that ruthless striking. Very accurate as well, very fast, still with some power. She could do. She's definitely very impressive. Alexa Grasso, who's moving up to 125. I'm curious how she looks at 125. I feel like that would be a better weight class for her. Who else? Yeah, there are many prospects right now though. So yeah, so things are looking good for just MMA in general. There are definitely a lot of people coming up that are promising. Johnny Walker, he hasn't shown me stuff that I'd be like, oh, this guy's gonna be champion. He's such a physical freak that like if he were to get the technical aspect down and strategic aspect down, I feel like he could pose a problem. But I do have questions about to how high he can go on that area, on the technique area, or if he's just going to be one of these exciting fighters that you put up to open up a pay-per-view or something like that. I don't know what his future is going to be, but certainly not discarding him. But I will say that I'm a little bit skeptical about his potential ceiling here, to be honest. To give you a frank assessment. Tok Tokni B. Danny, what is your favorite current top 5 UFC fighters to watch? Favorite fighters to interview? I'm not really. I'm a fan of the sport still, but obviously working in media, it changes your perspective on things. So I don't really have like favorite fighters, to be honest. But I do acknowledge there are some fighters that are more exciting to watch than others. Tony Ferguson, Justin Gaethje, mm, you know, guys like Nico Price, right? Mike Perry. The Diaz brothers. I thought they were always exciting. Masvidal puts on exciting fights. There's so many. There's a lot of fighters that make MMA very enjoyable. I don't have a favorite. As far as interviews, I don't have any. Maybe I do have some favorite that I interviews, but not because. But I don't know. Maybe because of our dynamic or whatnot. But I think, for example, Michael Chiesa is always an awesome interview. The guy follows MMA very closely. He could be a great analyst. He's a great analyst. He's actually done already starting to do some analyst work. So I always like to talk to him because I can ask him about other fighters and other things happening in other divisions, and he always have something interesting to say or something to add. So he's a very interesting person. Um, Joanna Jędrzejczyk always gives me good interviews whenever I talk to her. She's pretty cool. Trying to think of others that are fun interviewing. There's so many. That's one of the good things about covering MMA is that like the subjects, the people that you're mostly talking to, they're fun. They got interesting lives. Usually, there's always a lot to talk about, and it brings interesting personalities. This sport brings in an interesting personality, so that's something cool about my job. Nikki, Nikhil Mehra. Hopefully, I said that right. Would you ever consider doing a Warzone slash Fortnite live stream and Q&A simultaneously? Maybe answer questions that come up in the chat while you're playing, and even invite fighters to squad up with. Yeah, I used to do that. A year ago, I was kind of heavy on Twitch, and I was doing that. I was playing and just kind of answering questions, and it was kind of popping. Like, I was in a good streak, but got really busy and kind of stopped playing video games for a bit. And then recently, like a couple weeks ago, I did another stream of Fortnite, and I started playing Warzone again. So yeah, that's definitely something that I could do. If you guys are interested to see that, let me know, and I'll do one. It's all up to you guys. If you guys want me to do something like that, I can do it. But yeah, something cool. Something that I would like though, it'd be for it to be a little bit more laid back. Yeah, answer questions about really whatever, and kind of just focus on actually playing the game. And I would open it up to. I'll challenge you guys to FIFA if you guys want. I'm so good that I can take anybody and beat anybody any day. I can put up a FIFA challenge and just take on as many people as I can. Um, yeah. And Fortnite, yeah, I can totally do that. And I will do it. It's fun. It's fun to do. I got to do it more often. I mean, I play video games constantly. I just don't stream. But yeah, I should start doing that more often. Daniel Yorkie. Hey Danny, good to see you. Don't have any questions because I'm working outside here in Florida and it's hot. Well, best of luck, man. Stay hydrated and appreciate you tuning in, Daniel. Thoughts on Bellator postponing the June 6th card? When do you think they'll have an event? Yeah, man, it's just hard for the fighters to train. So you're kind of gambling at this point with any events. I mean, I'm still not convinced that UFC 249 goes down in um in somewhere in Florida, May 9th. I mean, I think it's possible. I think it's probably more likely than not, but I would think it. I would say it'd be silly to think that it's 100% happening. Uh, things change all the time. We know that this virus is going to hop around. New York wasn't always the hotbed. It is now, but other places were before. We know this virus moves around. So, Florida's not taking the best measures. We saw recently the beaches open and they were quite crowded. I know I have a family friend that was in coma from COVID-19. That's from Florida, from Miami. That was a while ago. Like, there's been a lot of cases in Florida popping up, so we don't know how Florida is going to look like regarding coronavirus from here to May 9th. Maybe they have to take more serious measures and actually close more things. I don't know. And precisely because I don't know, I can't say it's going to happen because I don't know. So don't take it as like I don't believe in the UFC. I just don't believe in coronavirus in the sense of like I just don't know what's it gonna do. The epicenter can change at any time. So we'll see. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But yeah, a lot of organizations are postponing events. UFC is the only one that has the ones that really want to make this happen, and the ones that have a lot of, because it takes money to get through all these hurdles, and they definitely have good financial backing. So they're moving forward with things. I'm certainly more comfortable with them hosting an event May 9th than I am earlier in the month. The more we know, the more this goes on, the more we know about the virus, the more we're controlling it, the more we're flattening the curve. So things are getting better by the day. So we'll see. But again, that depends on what area of the country as well, right? Um, Jory Goldstein, what do you think about Ariel stealing your headband boxing? I saw this on Twitter. There was a couple of people that tweeted at Ariel, and I responded, and Ariel did as well. Kind of like, oh, Danny Segura did it first. He's like, you're stealing from Danny Segura. I didn't invent the headband thing. The headband thing has been around for a long time. I copied it from somebody else. I've seen Lomachenko do it super well. I thought, if he's one of the best in the world, if he's doing it and he's getting pretty good at it. I mean, I'm not saying I'm not attributing his boxing skills specifically to that, but it has to help. Jair Rodriguez, who's a pinpoint accurate striker, also uses it. I might have been the first MMA media member to use it, and to start putting it out there, because I've put it out there a few times and me hitting the bag and stuff. And then my latest one, like a couple of days after, then Ariel started the whole Hawani boxing thing, which I don't really care. Again, I didn't invent the damn thing, so I mean, he might have gotten the idea from me from me posting that, but I didn't invent it. He's certainly not copying me or something like that. Like that thing's been around, and he used the hashtag, and I believe he's made took it to the next level and made apparel, and I believe the earnings from that are going to a good cause, like some charity, I believe, like something of America, but something about providing food to people. I don't know the details of it, but I believe that's the case. So good for him, man. If you got that from me, and you're using it to pick up funds to help other people, awesome. Like that's pretty sick. In a way, I kind of help people if that's the if you got it from me. Um, so that's good. That's awesome. Yeah, it's sick that he's doing that. And yeah, no, I don't care. Yeah, I mean, everybody's entitled to do whatever they want. So yeah, and I also, like, I do it. I don't do it for a social media trend. Like, I don't. I do it for my training. Like, I more often than not, like, I'm using it without me filming myself. Like, it's a way to stay sharp, to work out your hand coordination, your combinations on the ball, to pick up timing. So, you know, I'm still doing it. That hasn't changed anything. And if you're into boxing, I would encourage you to get one. You can have it here. You can train at home. You don't have to go anywhere. Like a heavy bag. Like I can't have a heavy bag in my apartment or a speed bag, but I can have that. So, it's fun way to kind of stay active. So if you do striking, I definitely recommend it. All right, I'll answer a couple more and I'll dip out. Let me scroll all the way to the bottom. What's your Twitch, mate? At Danny Segura TV, just or twitch.com/Danny Segura TV. I recently streamed Fortnite. I'm gonna keep streaming Fortnite, but once I get better at Warzone, I'm gonna start streaming Warzone, because I'm telling you, I am embarrassing at Warzone. Like, I'm still, dude. Till yesterday, I was able to get out of the gauntlet. Till yesterday, like, every time I always showed up, I either got messed up by a rock that somebody threw me from the stands, or I would get shot, or they would get the flag or something. But I sucked for the first time ever yesterday. I like got out of the gauntlet like 3 times, which I'm proud of. So as soon as I get good at it, or decent at it, I'll start streaming that. But for now, Fortnite, and again, if you guys want to catch these hands on FIFA, I'm used to handing L's all the time with shittier teams. Like, I could play with Parma, and you guys can be, Man City. Like, I'm that good. Not to brag, but I'm really good. All right. Any more questions? Throw any questions out there. Going once, going twice. All right. So I'm gonna call it a day here. I appreciate everybody that tuned in. By the way, I got a magic mouse. Check that out. So I'm investing in this. This whole experience is getting better. I got the questions now. I got the streaming software, right? So just fuck. So I got this option. I completely forgot. Check this out. So I have this option now, but I forget to use it when I switch over to the YouTube comments, to display YouTube comments. Remind me next time if I do another one of these streams that I have the ability to do so, not just the Twitter stuff. So I can actually feature your YouTube username here, which that's kind of a cool tool. But anyways, that's pretty much it. I'm gonna look to provide more content this week beyond this live Q&A. So make sure you tune into that. And remember, hit the like button, subscribe to this channel, tell your friends about it. I'm really trying to make this thing grow and make it a little bigger than it is. But I still appreciate, obviously, your continuous support. But yeah, the more this grows, the more I invest in it, and the better this whole experience will get. So yeah, get those again, like an anonymous dude 123 said. Shouts out to him. Get those questions in. So the way this works is Tuesday morning, kind of fluctuates, but 10 a.m. something like that. I put out a Twitter post, and you guys reply to it, and that's where I get the questions. So if you want to ask questions on Twitter, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Danny Segura TV. You can also find me on Instagram, on Facebook, all using that same at handle. So you can see it right here at Danny Segura TV. So that's Twitch, Facebook, Instagram. A lot of you guys ask me about music recommendations. I'm always posting on Instagram to what I'm listening to. Like if I'm listening to some cool, I'll screenshot it, throw it on my stories. All kinds of music. I listen to a wide range of shit. So make sure you follow me on that. And that's it. Appreciate your support. Please stay safe. Wash your hands. Keep the social distancing rule going. And that's it. That's all I got for you guys this week. I appreciate the love. Very good questions. See you guys next Tuesday at 7 p.m.